Welcome to UPLEVEL, Real Health, Real Talk with Dr. Jenna Blasi. I'm Dr. Jenna. I spent years crafting ways to help women thrive, and I want to help you do the same. On this podcast, we dive deep into health at every level, focusing on the mind, the body, and the spirit. This is where real conversations meet transformational wellness. We'll be talking about all the things that truly matter, from nutrition and fitness to lifestyle, mindset, and personal development. Plus, the real deal on managing stress and navigating menopause. So if you're ready to elevate your health journey with authentic, transformative insights, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to UPLEVEL. I'm Dr. Jenna, and I am looking forward to being with you today. And we're going to do something a little different today. I have a guest, and not maybe what one would expect, but my director of operations, Allie, and I were having a conversation a few weeks ago. She asked me some questions, and we had this really I thought interesting. I think she thought interesting as well, conversation. And all of a sudden I thought we should be recording this because we were talking about frequently asked questions and topics that come up for people. So we're going to start with that and let Allie ask some questions and have a more organic conversation. Nothing is prescripted, nothing is planned. And we'll try to think of as many of the frequently asked questions that we get, and one of them started with Allie asking me a question a few weeks ago. So welcome, Allie. Excited to have you.
Thank you.
All right. So Allie, welcome. Is there anything you want to tell us about yourself before we get started, or do you just want to jump right in?
I think like one of the main things is that we have a little bit of a difference in how we eat, our different eating styles. I am more of an animal-based eater, and I know that you are a vegan eater, so that led to some interesting conversation with us the other day. And one of my biggest questions is a vegan's perspective on oxalates, because as an animal-based eater, that's a big part of the diet is like, no oxalates, like don't eat them, they're bad for you. So one of my biggest questions and things I like to hear the different perspectives on is oxalates, especially from a plant-based eater.
Yes. So first of all, let me clarify. I'm not actually vegan. I'm vegetarian. So I do eat some, I like my Greek yogurt, as people who've listened to me know. But I think it's a great question because obviously we come from different backgrounds. One of the things I don't like happening with influencers online and in the food industry is not the food industry, it's more people, and a little bit the food industry might jump on this, is demonizing certain foods and demonizing aspects of foods. And I don't believe, for example, in removing whole macronutrients, as some people do. And so when we look at oxalates, the research is really limited on oxalates having the effect that many people are claiming that they do. And if we can take anything apart and find something toxic in it. We can take water. Water in excess is not good for us, right? If we really, you could die if you have too much water. You'd have to go pretty far with that, but still. And if you take hydrogen and oxygen apart, there's damaging. And so I feel like when we look at lectins, when we look at oxalates, when we look at isolating aspects of a food and trying to make them out to be these horrible things, I think that it's not supported in the literature, but I also think it leads to this obsession about fear around food and obsession of what can I eat and what can't I eat. There are some people, for example, whose doctors, they might have kidney stones from, and they tell them not to eat oxalates. I don't even know how supported that is in the research. It's a theoretical risk, but I don't know how often that it actually turns into a tangible risk. That being said, everybody's individual. And so there are some people that might feel better when they lower that. But typically, and this is my issue with antioxidant diet, carnivore diet, these diets that are you need to avoid all of these types of foods, is that it's typically an elimination effect. We all could benefit from an elimination diet. Our guts are disrupted. We have stress. We're not sleeping. We're going through menopause. We've taken medications, right? And so our guts are disrupted. We're not absorbing nutrients. So for example, The research on the carnivore diet is really more about utilizing it as an extreme elimination diet for 3, maybe 6 months. And then you introduce foods back in. And doctors that I know that are working with a lot of patients who are unable to introduce those foods back in, it's really easy to say, oh, it's because, vegetables are terrible for you and you shouldn't have them and oxalates are no good, when really our guts should be tolerant. And there might be a SIBO, like there might be some type of overgrowth that's making it so that people can't have foods that are actually healthy. And I know there's tons of different decisions or thoughts on food. And, one of the reasons I'm primarily plant-based or plant-focused, I sometimes like to say, so I do like to avoid labels to a certain extent. There's a variety of reasons. And yeah, there's a lot of good literature out there about being plant-based and health benefits. But for a lot of people, they want their chicken or they want their turkey, and that can be a healthy part of their diet if we figure out what's right for them. And so with something like oxalates, I feel like we're isolating a nutrient and then saying, this is going to do you harm. I mean, even sugar's inflammatory. Sugar leads to diabetes. Most of us have sugar cravings that are out of control, but we need glucose. We need sugar. And so just demonizing, it's really more the form. And so this may change, and I'm always open to new research, but when I've done a deep dive into looking for research on oxalates being bad, I haven't been able to find it. And or find anything that was well done, if we look at all of the differences in opinion and all the people screaming online about this diet and that diet, I know you and I have had this discussion before about, if I got into it with I'm not going to name any names, but like somebody that's like, yeah, this is what the research shows. And when I go into those studies, I don't find that even what they're purporting as the research that proves their point are well done studies if we look at them critically. But I know other people would argue to the death, the opposite. When I was listening to a woman last night, she said, I will die on this hill. I know there's people that will die on the carnivore hill or the keto hill. And I'm not willing to die on any hill to a certain extent, because hopefully we're always learning and evolving. But so far, in my 50 plus years, well, I probably can't say that because I don't think as an infant I was studying this, but in my 20 plus years as a practitioner, probably 30 plus in the natural health field, the research across the board of a Mediterranean type diet is strong. And that's going to be high oxalate. They're eating high oxalate foods. And so if we have somebody join one of our programs and they can't do oxalates because their doctor told them not to, then we'll work with people. And again, there's always individuality of how long maybe somebody needs to eliminate certain foods to get to their health goals. And that is where I was giving a talk actually it was actually a vegan film festival. I think that's what it was. Yeah. And they asked me to come speak. And there was a guy in the audience who was like, hey, I tried not eating meat and I really felt I needed it. It's like, we all have to find what works for us. I'm not here to preach to anybody, right? I want to look at the research. I want to present the research. I do not feel the research supports for our heart health eating a lot of red meat. And that seems to be confirmed over and over and over again. But if someone's like, hey, I eat this once a week and I feel strong instead of weak, great. Do you. And as long as we're informed and listening to ourselves, for me, it's those two pieces. And that's really, I feel like if I were to sort of sum up my relationship with what I do, it's like science, but intuition. Mm-hmm. Never disregard your intuition. Never be so just about the science that you're not willing to listen to your own body, right? But at the same time, intuition and dogma are two different things. And that's where I've learned a lot in the last few years of learning how to critically appraise research much better than I used to, is I had a lot of dogma about certain foods that wasn't supported when I really looked into it. And I could go on, but I want to let you, go.
The intuition part. And I feel like I've tried every diet myself, because I'll get like really into, I'll listen to all these people like on Instagram or whatever, like so into this one way of eating. And so I was vegan for a couple of years, and then I switched and I kind of had a combination, and I tried like paleo and keto, and now I'm animal based. I feel like I've tried a little bit of everything, but the more I think about it, when it really comes down to it, after trying everything, I'm like, this is what works best for me right now. And look at how it's changed over the years. And when I was vegan, there's a period of time where I'm like, this is great. And then over a longer period of time, I'm like, this is not working for me anymore. But that was for my body, you know, and I've just adapted over time. And so I definitely don't think any one diet should be promoted to everybody. There's no like one size fits all. And I think everybody should really just listen to their intuition and what feels best for their body, given, you know, like all their blood work and everything, they're like healthy, just not like, yeah, sticking to any one diet just because that's what someone's so gung-ho about, you know?
Absolutely. And and that's where the labs can be a really good piece of information. For me, I had tried some different diets. I went to a naturopathic doctor, which is how I got into this when I was in my 20s. And she said, you're too tired for how young you are. You're too tired. And so I was vegetarian at the time. And so she said, I want you eating meat. And it was really, I left there and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd been vegetarian for years. And I was like, ugh. And then I thought, shit, I just paid this woman all of this money and I'm not going to listen to her or be open. So because for me, the not eating animals it's spiritual, primarily. Like there's a health piece, there's an environmental piece, but for me, it's a spiritual thing. And so it's more of a non-negotiable, right? Because it doesn't matter what, like, if someone's like, hey, you would feel, I mean, I feel pretty good, but they're like, hey, you would feel 20% better if you ate meat. That I don't care. I don't need that 20%, right? That's not a price I'm willing to pay for that. But at that time I was tired and I was like, well, okay, like she's educated. Let me try this. And I did. I tried it for, just like you're saying, I tried it for 6 months. I had to like push out of my head, which I did the same thing when I lived in France. I was a vegetarian when I went to France and I was like, I'm not going to live in France and be like, I don't eat this and I don't eat this. And so I sort of pushed my whole belief system out and was willing to eat whatever they wanted to feed me. Which was really trying at times because it was like cow's tongue and like other stuff. And I was like, oh, pig's intestine. I was really pushing the boundaries of my poor, previously my vegetarian self. Anyway, and so, what was I going to say? And so I tried it for 6 months. I didn't feel better. I didn't have more energy. And at that time, then I kind of, after that time, came back around to why was I doing this in the first place? And so I went back to not eating meat. But I see a lot of people, they come to us, they've done keto or they've done, and then they don't feel well, especially women more than men, but they don't feel well or they didn't get the results or maybe they even got worse. And then other people who've tried things that maybe worked a little bit or for a little while, like you were saying, but they're not there. And so that's why we, like in what we do, right? We want to reset the whole system so we can actually say, what does your system need? And I know a lot of people who went on carnivore and then maybe they felt better, but all their labs got worse.
Mm-hmm.
That matters too. So
the labs have to be in line too. Yeah. The labs have to be in line too, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's that intersection, right? Of what feels good to us. What is sustainable? Because that's key. Like we can do anything for a little while. If it helps us feel better, that's great. But is it something to stay on for the rest of their life? Like I was just saying, I think in my webinar this morning, I was saying, if I would go to France, I want to eat their bread, like, and to be like gluten free. I mean, unless someone is celiac. And so we've just become so hypersensitive. Everybody's so reactive to all the foods, and that's I think why it's a perfect soil for all of these different diets because we're getting sicker as a culture. People are gaining weight, diabetes is out of control, all of the diseases and the meds. And so we're like grasping at straws and we're trying all these extreme things. Our guts are so disrupted. It's like SIBO this and do that. And we can't even tolerate anything anymore. And I believe part of that's our food supply. Like I've got patients that don't tolerate gluten, don't tolerate dairy. They go to Europe and they're fine.
Totally fine, yeah.
Yeah, and part of that's the food supply, part of that's they're relaxed. When we're just stressed and going all the time, like that has an effect. But yeah, being able to look at, and it's kind of similar, the lab idea to research. The research, labs, personal preference, and sustainability with how you feel, bringing all those together. And that's largely where I think the individuality comes in. We had a patient whose triglycerides were, I think, well over 800. And he had tried everything. I mean, he went on statins, he went on medications, he changed his diet, he gave up smoking, he gave up alcohol, he tried all these things. He thought he was going to be dead by the time he was 50. Nothing worked. And his wife, I mean, you probably know who I'm talking about, but his wife did our program, and he was so impressed with her results. He calls up and he's like, I want to do this. I've got nothing to lose. I've got to try this. And on his second lab review, after we took him through our process, his triglycerides dropped to like a little over 200, I think it was. Never in his life had they gone that low. And so the reason I bring this up is not to tell that story, which is cool in and of itself, but we had a follow-up with him recently. And he started experimenting with like, oh, let me, add these other things, like more red meat. Let me add that back in. Let me move my body less. I don't remember all the details of what he changed. We wanted to see sort of, like any of us, we want to push that boundary, and everything worsened. And I think he maybe had some symptoms return, although a lot of it was asymptomatic. It was just his risk for a cardiovascular event. And so in his case, being more Mediterranean based, being more, and he wasn't vegetarian. We don't force anybody to, be vegetarian or be vegan or anything like that, but to kind of dial it in a little bit more. And he got to do his own experiment. And to me, that's the best, because I'm not here to preach. Like, our body is our laboratory. So let's experiment like you did with all the different things, like I did when I'm like, okay, fine. I paid this woman this money. Let me
that's a really important piece, is to just, experiment and really learn about your own body and what's going to work for it.
Yeah.
It's really important.
And be open. That's where we all get so caught up in our dogma. And there is a vegan guy that I follow online. I can't think what his full name is. It's Drew's Daily Dose, but I can't remember, Drew something. Anyway, and he was like super pro paleo for years and years, and it was like, this is why, all the research, but he stayed open. And then he ended up actually becoming vegan because he felt the research really supported a vegan diet, and he's fit and he's healthy. I mean, there's definitely ways with any diet to do it wrong and ways to do it right. When you and I have delved into kind of what you eat, it's actually fairly balanced. Remember, I had my preconceptions. I was like, oh, Allie, what the hell are you eating? Like, what are you doing? And then when we actually got down to it, you hadn't eliminated like all the things that I thought that you had.
Yeah, I'm not full carnivore. Yeah, I'm more animal-based. There's more of a mix of different foods for sure.
And my concern for you, again, was not dogma, but just long-term health. Everything's a trade-off. And that's my concern with the animal heavy screaming really that goes on Instagram.
And you never know, my diet may change again,
I imagine it will. I mean, you're still young.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
And,
go ahead.
like right now, I feel like this is the best I've ever felt, and this is really working well for me right now. But that's not to say that it's gonna, it's not gonna change again in the future. And I like to go with like the research and what all the new different ideas are, and try things out for myself and see how I feel, And when I was vegan, I don't know if it's the oxalates or what it was, but when I was eating all the vegetables, it was just like I was bloated all the time, and I just had horrible digestive distress. And once I eliminated all of that and I went to the animal base, I was like, I just had so much relief. But that's allowing my gut to heal too, and now if I have an occasional vegetable, because I still love vegetables, so I still have them from time to time, but when I have them now, it's a different experience, and I can enjoy it every once in a while, but it doesn't cause so much distress, so I think healing the gut is also important. But yeah, who knows what my next way of eating will be.
Healing the gut is huge. And I mean, that's why we have such success with the people that we work with, is we start with working on their gut. And so people come in from all walks of life in terms of their diet. I mean, all walks of life in general, but in terms of how they eat, they come in with a lot of different things they've tried. And once we heal the gut, but interestingly, in our gut healing process, we are increasing people's vegetables, but it takes time to build up tolerance to fiber. Fiber has so many health benefits. I mean, the recommended amount for women is 25 to 50 grams of fiber. But if you just start, with all the vegetables, there will be bloating, there will be discomfort, especially if we're building on a shoddy foundation. And so Yeah, I love the openness and the conversation and knowing, like, so for me, eating animals is non-negotiable. I mean, it has been for 30 years now. Um, and I will experiment many things without that piece. But I'm in the minority. Like for a lot of people, that's not a non-negotiable. So that's fine. Let's look at what that looks like for an individual. And I think that all of this focus on, I say often, if your diet has a fancy name, it's probably not sustainable. It's like, is it going to give you what you need if you're pregnant? Is it something that you can sustain? If it doesn't, it's probably not a great long-term option. Uh, and I was vegan when I managed the cheese department at Wild Oats. So one of my post-college jobs was I was the manager at the cheese department at Wild Oats Market, which is like the original Whole Foods. And I was vegan. And the woman who trained me, who I took over for, was also vegan. It was the weirdest thing of like this succession of vegan managers of the cheese department. Now, to be fair, we also managed the soy and like the alternative cheeses, but I'm not a fan of those. I think if you need it to transition or you just want that like cheesy thing and you're not going to do dairy, that's fine. But there's no nutritional value. I mean, there's some better ones today that come from nuts. Like there's some cashew ones and things that are better. But and I was vegan, and then when I got pregnant with my son, I was like craving dairy. So you never know. And so I started going to the farmer's market and getting like yogurt from people that a farm
I
that
have
I
a
knew.
question for you.
Yeah.
What's your take on raw milk?
Oh gosh. Oh, and I feel on the spot for this one because I'll tell you what. All right, so I was a fan of raw milk. And in fact, my son had trouble latching, and we about 6 months into breastfeeding, I had to supplement, and so I would go and get raw goat's milk, and which doesn't have everything you need, so I had to kind of like make my own formula. And now since then I have been looking into like the research, and it's not good. Like this is going to polarize some people. It's not good. And so the people are like, oh, all of these illnesses come from pasteurized and homogenized milk, and raw milk is like, it doesn't. Well, you're comparing like a very small percentage of people to a large. And so let's say of everybody that drinks milk, more problems come from drinking, say, pasteurized milk. But that's because 2% of the population drink raw milk, and 90% of milk-borne illnesses come from the people drinking raw milk. So this is one of those where like, I was so naturally trained. I was like, oh, it's got to be raw milk, and that's the only kind you should. And then this is only recent. Some of the more science-based nutrition people that I follow have been pulling up all the research, and I realize I'm like, and again, I don't drink milk. I don't like milk. So I don't care that much about this issue. Like, so I'm not going into it. And my son was fine. Like, I didn't, thank God, like poison him. And I believed it was more alive. Like at the time I was like, this is the way to do it. And it's got all the enzymes. But in what I've looked at since then, honestly, it doesn't seem like a great idea. And I know the people that drink it would be like, you don't know what you're talking about. But this is where I think we can get caught up in dogma. And if you
Yeah.
look at the actual research and stats, the risk of the raw milk versus the benefit, it's not a good ratio. And yeah.
There's something about it that I like. I don't drink it. I don't think I like the taste of it. And I also just kind of have that like, is this good to drink in the back of my head? But I have experimented with the cheese because before I was like, there's no way I can eat dairy or drink milk because that would also make me bloated and give me digestive issues. And like, I just can't. So I experimented with the raw cheese, and I don't have any digestive issues at all with it. I eat it almost every day, but I haven't gotten to the milk yet. But I thought that was interesting just with the experimentation with the cheese. So, like there's something about it that is easier on the digestive system.
Also, since you've healed, experimented with regular cheese?
Yes. Like if I'm at a restaurant or something and every once in a while I'm like, okay, I gotta have that, then I'll try it and I get bloated every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a tricky experiment because the raw milk cheese you're doing at home, right?
Yeah.
And so versus at the restaurant, they've added tons of extra sodium, which is bloating. Who knows what else is in the food.
I have tried it block style too. Like just like if I'm at my dad's house or something and he has like a block of cheese, I've tried it just plain like that. And yeah, there's something about it that just does not agree with me.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't eat cheese hardly ever. But when I was going through a phase of eating cheese, I always would get the raw milk cheese. And you know what? I think it probably, I don't know, it probably falls in the same category as milk, but maybe not because I'll have to look into it. I don't actually know what the research is on raw cheese. I've only been hearing and looking into raw milk. But I have in the past, not research based, just my dogma and my preference, been more inclined, just like you, to get the raw cheese. Yeah, but that is where the individuality comes in. That is
Mhm.
where we can live fear based, right? Or we can live in our intuition, and our intuition, I believe, will always guide us. And so, if we're coming from a balanced place, and you're like, I've noticed that this feels better in my body, then great. What I will say though, and this is actually, I'm so glad you brought this up because we were talking about this in our team meeting the other day, if you remember, about the placebo and the nocebo. And I did a podcast on placebo and nocebo. And so recently we were talking about caffeine in one of the groups that I study with, the Confident Clinician. And there's a lot of dogma in naturopathic medicine against caffeine. Coffee's bad, coffee's terrible for you. But the research doesn't really support like even with high blood pressure, I think it's up to 3 cups a day is safe. Now, that doesn't mean that one person, they might be, and we all want to like be like, well, my mom or me, and we're like 2 people I know. And so, and we tend to attract people that have similar experiences as us as well. And so, that's been interesting for me because I've been saying caffeine, like, oh, you got to eliminate the caffeine. It's like, do you? For a period of time, I think anything we're addicted to is good to eliminate. Like, I love chocolate. I go through chocolate washout periods. I think that anything that is like we need is good to eliminate. But the research on the detriments of caffeine and coffee are actually pretty weak. And so, so they did this study where they were checking caffeine on exercise endurance. I think it was endurance versus strength. And so they had 3 groups of people. One group they gave caffeine to and told them they were getting caffeine. The other group got a placebo. And the third group they gave caffeine to and told them they didn't get it, told them they got placebo. This is the power of the mind as well as what's real about food. The placebo group, no changes in their exercise. They got a placebo, no change. The group that got caffeine and knew they had caffeine had the greatest gains in their exercise that day. And the group that got caffeine but were told they didn't, were told they got placebo, had a little bit of gains. So the caffeine still worked because caffeine in and of itself has been shown to like improve your exercise gains. I'm drawing a blank right now specifically on what those gains are. And then their belief that they were getting this like, thing that's going to help it boosted it even more, or at least more than the other groups. And then the ones that got it got those little gains, but their belief that they didn't get it dulled those gains. So the mind is very powerful. And so I bring this up because I don't know for you, for me, for any of us, like, do I believe that raw cheese is going to be more digestible? Because I also told you guys the story of the group that had all gone gluten-free and all of their symptoms, or many, whatever it was, they've resolved. And then they gave the groups foods and told one group they were getting gluten when they didn't. And one group, anyway, all the groups that thought they got gluten, even if they didn't, their symptoms came back. Like that's how powerful our minds are. If we think something's going to be bad for us, it will be.
Yeah, that's nuts. I've seen something with the raw cheese for sure because I think I believed, like when I started having it, I believed it. So even if it's placebo, I'm like, hey, it's working. But totally, I agree with what you're saying.
And so we get hung up on this idea like this food is terrible, but it's like, but how much of that is our belief around it? That's why I love that expression, yogis can digest rocks. Because the idea is if you're in a calm state of mind, if you believe you're going to be fine, we actually are much better off. And so I think it's a perfect segue and probably a nice place to close is that if we're open, if we think something's going to harm us, we're actually adding to that harm. Like studies have shown. And to your point, placebo, if we think something's going to benefit us, I mean, the average is like 40 to 60% or 40% plus or something. Oh, it's in my other podcast. I don't remember anymore exactly the percentage. We will benefit from it. And so if we want to have a more expansive diet, I think it starts with believing that we can, just like health, believe that we can get better. And that is part of the journey. And then we look at the labs and we look at the research and we look at the actual evidence. And that's where we can grow, I think, and try different things if we're open to, all right, well, look, the research supports this. So let me like buy into that and allow it to be experimented on in an open-minded way. There was something else I was going to say, but I don't remember what it was.
I do agree. The mindset is a really big piece. Like, I think it just goes hand in hand with what you're eating. Like, if you don't have the open mind about it, and I guess thinking about it in a positive way, it kind of doesn't matter what you do, So it's really important.
That's where so many people are so paranoid about food. They're just so afraid to eat anything, and that's such an unhealthy place to be. And so, if my takeaway that I hope that people come away with is like, listen to your body. I think it's ideal to work with experts that can guide us and take us through a process to figure out what works for us, but always listen to your higher guidance and be open. And that nocebo effect, that also shows how important our attitude is. If you start the day thinking it's going to be crap, guess what? It's probably a pretty good chance it's going to be crap. And if you start off going, today's going to be great, then when those obstacles come in, you're like, that's all right, boom, just hitting them out of the park, because you have a different attitude about it.
I feel like you just digest better too. Like, if you're not stressed and you have that positive mindset, then you're going to digest better as well.
100%. 100%. All right. Anything else you want to add, Allie? Any other questions or?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this level of UPLEVEL. And if you did, please share it with your friends, your families, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave us a rating, a review, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much for joining me, Allie. Appreciate it. It was fun. It was fun to have you. And all right. Thanks, everyone. Till next time.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of UPLEVEL, Real Health, Real Talk. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your health journey, one that nourishes not just your body, but your mind and spirit as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's episode, please leave a review. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep thriving. And remember, true wellness is a journey, and you are on the right path.